learned music from the black ladies of her youth, including her fearsome great-grandmother, who played guitar to country singer Minnie Pearl, which is, wow, on Saturday night radio, but only proper Pentecostal chords on Sunday. Ms. Carroll later formalized her studies with a BA in African American Studies at Yale University. Her art challenges deeply held stereotypes about the complex truth of African American family, love, and resistance during slavery, and explores the role of music as a part of that everyday reality of life. Her latest show, Folk First, Black Roots Music, celebrates those early songs and draws direct connections with the music of contemporary artists. Ms. Carroll wrote and starred in the award-winning Singin' with a Sword in My Hand, a musical docudrama about a family escaping slavery. She conceived of and produced the first New York City Underground Railroad Festival Juneteenth celebration, partnering with Plymouth Church of the Pilgrim, a nationally certified Underground Railroad site, and the Brooklyn Historical Society. Also, she's an avid gardener. Keith Johnston received his BA in Humanities from NYU, in addition to a number of awards. He co-founded Backyard Theater. He's a freelance director, writer, and producer at BET, and is the artistic director of the American Theater of Harlem. He was a musical director for Lisa Lisa and Cult Jam, and has performed with Jon Hendricks, Olu Dara, Brian McKnight, Toots, Shirley Murdoch, and Brian McKnight, which I said. Okay. He has also written, directed, and co-produced Thriving Teens, which is a film series on parenting pre-adolescent children for the NYU Child Study Center, and devised and implemented workshops addressing HIV/AIDS, parenting, and violence in South Africa. Today's program, The Union and the Confederacy in Westchester, visits Simon Tierce and his wife, residents of the African American community in Westchester called the Hills, as they reflect on Lincoln's defeat in the presidential election in Westchester. Ms. Carroll, Mr. Johnston, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Oh, man, so good to see you folks. Excuse me, I'm a little exhausted. I've been traveling from century to century, so I'm here to just talk to you a little bit today. My name is Nathaniel Odell. I live in the Hills, and I just want to talk to you about what it was like to live in 1862. But my friend Mama Lean, she's going to join me shortly. I have a question. What year is this? 2016? It's a peculiar time. Oh man, I'm walking around, I'm trying to talk to people, they don't talk. I mean, I asked a young person, what's the thing hanging out their ears? And they looked at me like I was crazy. Everybody got these little light boxes, look like they hypnotized. Everybody looking at these light boxes. I asked this man, I said, what is that? He said it's something about getting into a net. I don't understand this time, but I'll share with you, with Mama Lean, what we know back in the Hills in this community. I talked to one of these young girls, and she said she had a cell phone. I'm like, what on earth is that? I don't want nothing to do with no cell. You know, I've been running away from cells all my life, trying to lock me up. But anyway, like I said, I live up in the Hills. We're gonna talk to you a little bit about, I'm looking for Mama Lean. She gonna help us out here. So I'll call her out. Now we're gonna play a little music. And if you hear something you like or you're familiar with, just join in. That's how we do in the Hills community. You know, music is a big part of how we get by. All right, it's who we are. We are music. And so, give
doing today? All right, well, I'm glad to hear it. My name is Mama Lean. My born name is Elizabeth Lucretia Selena Purdy. But you can call me Mama Lean. I'm gonna sit down. This time traveling does take it out of you. Now, I was born in the Hills community, like Nate. I live over there. And the way I got there was my family was freed by the Quakers. And they gave us a little parcel of land. And the Hills is up there by Westchester. No, it's in Westchester, yes. But it's up there by White Plains, North Castles, where White Plains and North Castle and North Harrison come together. Y'all heard of Silver Lake? Yeah. Yes, it's not too far from there. And I lived on Stony Hills Road in the Hills. And there were some others that was freed by the Methodists as well. And then on July the 4th, 1827, New York freed all of the Negroes. And so there was one reuniting of families, and folks migrated to the Hills. And well, the country was a little rugged, had a lot of rocks. But we got them rocks out of the way, and we farmed, and we made our way. There was the Odells, and like Nate, you know Odell, and the Halsteads, and the Purdys, and my kinfolk, and well, there's some others. We wasn't all related, but we all took care of each other, because that's how it was in that time. Now, most of us did farming. We had our own little farms, but as I say, the farmland was a little rugged where we was. But it wasn't a little rugged where them Quakers live and the Methodists live, so we hired out to them, and a man could make $16 an hour.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Oh my goodness.
Not an hour.
Not an hour.
Oh,
Oh my goodness. He could make 16, no, a month.
No.
I was talking to somebody yesterday, they talked about they made $30 an hour. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
How could y'all do that?
Somebody's talking about they make $200 a day. I tell you, it takes a whole year to make that.
Yeah. Yeah, but a man could make $16 a month. That was good money back in that time. And in no time at all, he would be able to save some money and buy his own land and have his own farm, get a big old farm. So a lot of people was farming. And you know, interestingly enough, in that area, people made shoes. So there was a lot of people making shoes at the time. Of course, we had our own barber, and there was some folks who had boarding houses. And it was hard, but we also had some folks who was machinists and blacksmiths and carpenters.
Carpenters, yeah.
Yes. Now, our most famous carpenter was that Simeon Tiercy.
Oh, yeah.
Simeon Tiercy, he was the one that made the platform when President Lincoln came to Peekskill. I think you can probably see that platform over there. No, upstairs. It's upstairs, ain't it? Upstairs in that big old, what they call diorama. You'll be able to see that platform up there. Our Simeon Tiercy built that platform.
Yeah, right from the Hills.
For President Lincoln, yes he did. And he built a lot of houses right there in the Hills on Stony Hill. Didn't he build your house?
He built my house. Yeah.
And he built the houses up and down the road. He didn't only build houses for the colored folks, he also built houses and did carpentering for the white people. He did a lot of carpentry for that, Mr. Southern.
He kept Mr. Southern, kept him busy, he made good money.
Mr. Sutherland, Edmund Sutherland, now he was the big boss man up there in White Plains. He belonged on all the boards, and he had a paper called the Eastern States Journal. But Mr. Sutherland, he was pro-slavery, like New York, because you know Mr. Lincoln did not win New York in the election because New York was pro-slavery. And it was Democrat. Democrat was pro-slavery back in them days. And Mr. Sutherland, he was always writing articles in favor of slavery and against the the right of black men to be able to vote, even though they had the money, because you had to have $250 worth of property as a black man to be able to vote.
$250? So where's the property?
Yeah, well, a lot of them had it. They was making $16 a month. I told you.
Who in the hills got $250 worth of property?
The Tierces had it.
Simeon?
No, his father Solomon
Oh,
had it.
that explains.
The Barkers had it. The Gilchrists had it.
Right, the Guild, I know that.
Yeah, so there was some that had it. But they, we're not sure whether they voted because, it was a time when people had to keep working. They didn't want no trouble. So they had to keep working. And fortunately, however, we did not have to depend on that Eastern States Journal. We had our own paper, but Mr. Sutherland, he was always writing about that fugitive slave law.
No, don't talk to me about that.
Well, there was a number of fugitive slave laws, but the worst one was in 18. Didn't something happen to you?
Oh, twice. They tried to sell me into slavery. See, I'm born a free man. Now, I grew up on the 5 Points downtown. And well, one time, my cousin got me out of that mess. The commissioner, he vouched for me that I was a free man.
Oh, yeah.
My father was a slave, but my father, he grew up at Phillipsburg Farm, a slave, but he traveled back and forth right down this river, doing some trade. Yeah, and that's where he met my mother, and I was born down 5 Points free. But twice I almost got sold into slavery because of that Fugitive Slave Act.
Fugitive slave,
Two guys grabbed me one time, tried to bring me to the commissioner, and I just weaseled my way. I was a little skinny little thing. I weaseled my way out of there and ran into somebody's tenement, saw two people in a tub, went right past them, got on the fire escape, and got my way home.
That's all right. Well, I'm glad to hear that.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
That was a scary time.
Yeah.
Because here's a law whereby any white man can just grab any black person and sell. Well, they take it to the commissioner. They get $10 for a runaway slave.
And
if he wasn't a runaway, they get $5.
Well, there was
there's some incentive.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of stuff going on at 5 Points. We were free, but not all that free.
There was some marshals who didn't want to go along with that fugitive slave law, but they got fined $1,000. If they didn't want to go along with it. That was terrible, right?
Oh, yeah.
We would read about them marshals in our paper, which was called the Anglo-African.
That's my paper.
Yeah. We kept up on the news, the abolition news, all the good news, the right and proper news in the Anglo-African. And of course we had our church. We had our very own church in the hills called the Hills Methodist Episcopal Zion Church of Colored Peoples. And we did a lot of activities in that church. Why, just the other week, Reverend Tillman is an abolition preacher. He preaches a lot about abolition right over there in Rye, New York. Reverend Tillman, he was preaching and trying to get us to be more involved. I don't know how much more involved we could be, especially Simeon. Simeon, he was the assistant Simeon Tierce, he was the assistant church secretary. He was very, very involved in the abolition movement through our church. But in them times, as we said before, you had to be careful because you didn't want to ruin your work situation. And Simeon was working over there for Mr. Sutherland, and it was something else, yes.
That's about it, Mr. Sutherland, sir. I'm done here. Looks pretty good. You don't mind, I'm about to go on home. I'll be back here in the morning, put a little shine on it. But that's pretty much how the porch gonna look. Yes, sir. All right, then. I'll see you in the mornings. Partner? Oh, no, I wasn't listening to anything y'all was saying. I was just busy here, sir. No, my opinion, I have no idea, sir. I'm just thinking about my wife is cooking something home. I need to get home right now. Thank you, sir. I'll see you in the morning. Put that shine on it. All right, take care. Woo, it's hot today. Hey, how you doing, Nathaniel? Good to see you. All right.
Oh, is that
Oh,
you?
honey sugar.
All right. How you doing, Simeon? Okay. All
I gotta
right.
tell you something here. There ain't nobody around here.
No, ain't nobody. What you so agitated for?
No, just, I've heard some stuff today.
Oh, you heard? Oh. Listen, do you want a nice cool glass of lemonade?
Yes, please.
All right. Okay. Let me give you a
Please.
nice cool glass of lemonade.
So, I was working over there at the Sutherlands. And well, he was over there with a whole bunch of his fellow friends.
Yes.
And they just toasting and chortling, talking about that Stonewall Jackson, how the Confederates, they win in the war. And they going on about Robert E. Lee and all of that. I said, well, ain't that something? I'm there working right there, no more than 3 yards away. They just talking and happy as it. And one of them fellow friends talking about they probably gonna be bringing slavery back to New York.
Oh, no.
Like I wasn't even there. You know how we do. I don't hear nothing, right? Well,
Yes, you can't pay that no mind.
Like I'm invisible. They're just talking, and he gonna ask me what I think. I said, I didn't hear nothing, sir.
Yeah. Well, Simeon, you can't pay that. You can't pay that no mind. You can't pay it no mind because I was reading in Anglo-African the other day what Frederick Douglass said. He said a man who puts a chain around another man's ankle will soon find it around his neck. Or something like that. He said it's something like that.
Yes. You got that right.
And we just can't worry about that. Why Reverend Tillman was talking about that just the other week. The Union Army is gonna be all right because you know why? You know why?
Why?
Because God is on our side.
Yes, baby.
Yes.
I believe in that.
Yes, he is.
Our ancestors been praying and finally something's going on. Let me tell you, I read yesterday that a lot of them Southern colored men, they joining the Union Army. They just escaping. I'm telling you.
Oh, that's a wonderful thing.
They just escaping, running over to the
so
Union
glad
Army.
to hear that.
Thousands.
Thousands.
They talking about thousands, honey.
Hallelujah, that's wonderful.
Woo. I have to put a little shine on this like I did in the Southern
thousands.
Schools.
Yeah, because you know why? Because Joshua fought the battle of Jericho.
That's what it's like.
Yeah.
Joshua and Jericho.
Joshua fought the battle of Jericho. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, and the walls come tumbling down. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, and the walls come tumbling down. You can talk about your king of Gideon. You can talk about your man Saul. There's none like good old Joshua at the battle of Jericho. Up through the walls of Jericho, he marched with spirit hand. Go alone and ram home, Joshua cried, 'cause the battle am in my hand. Then the ram-tail sheep horns begin to blow, trumpets begin to sound. Joshua commanded the children to shout, and the walls come tumbling down that morning. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, and the walls come tumbling down. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, and the walls come tumbling down. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right.
I tell you, this is a time I've been praying and praying. And
Yes,
you know that President Lincoln,
Yes,
he's about just declared that Emancipation Proclamation.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It's
Yes.
supposed to start next year.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I'm telling you,
Yes.
you talking about freeing all the slaves left in the 50 states.
Oh, that's a beautiful
something.
thing.
Let me see our kinfolk and all that.
Yeah, oh,
Ooh.
that's beautiful.
Oh, we living in a time.
Yes, we're living in a wonderful
Hey,
time.
won't be long before.
Uh-huh.
Hey, won't be. You know, I was just thinking. Won't be long before the northern colored men can fight in the war. Wouldn't
Yes,
be
that would be so lovely. You know, them young boys, them Barker brothers and them Gilchrist, they just been itching to go to fight. And I think that would be wonderful
Can you
for them
imagine?
when they get, I think that's a wonderful thing.
If they start getting some
And
of us
we
out there
gonna
in the
be-
war, then we can do something about this thing.
Yes, they could do something. That'd be
Hey,
a
what
wonderful.
about me? I could fight in the war. Oh, can you imagine that? 1, 2, 3. Can you imagine me in uniform? Woo! I can't wait. Can you imagine that? I'm telling you, Frederick Douglass said it's not the gentle shower we need a thunder. He said we need an earthquake, a whirlwind. There's some changes going on and I'm there. I gotta go fight too.
Nate,
If
you
they
know
ask me to fight, I think they're getting everybody, all ages.
Nate, you know you're the church secretary and you got a good business here and you're so involved in the abolition movement right here. I think it would be,
I'm not
I
talking-
think
I'm
you
not-
could really do
What
some
you trying
good.
to say? I can't go to war?
Sure you could go to war,
Of
honey.
course. I'm
Absolutely.
agile. I work every day. I feel
yes,
good.
yes, you're nice and strong. It's a beautiful, you know, Nate, it's wonderful, but you know, you have a family. You have a business.
I know that, Sarah.
You're very involved in the church.
I know that, Sarah, but I don't want to hear it right now. 'Cause
You know,
what?
we
It may
got-
happen, it may not.
We got the young boys. Them young boys, they 20. Aaron Halstead is 20. Them Barker brothers is 22, 23. They can go. They don't have family.
I'm
They
42.
don't-
I can still go out there and fight.
Yes, honey, I know. But I don't want you to go.
I know that, baby. But if I got to go, I got to go. This is fighting for me. This is fighting for you, our children. It's fighting for our future, our people. I'll be a damn fool to be out here not doing nothing. Just doing my carpentry work while everybody out there going out to fight. They need everybody they can. You know, Frederick Douglass said, you can't fight a war with one hand. One white hand fighting the war while the black hand is tied up. What'd that look like?
Don't look like much of nothing.
Come on, sit down and eat, honey. Don't even worry about that. If I got to shed a little blood for everybody else, I'll do that. Jesus shed blood. I can shed blood.
You ain't Jesus.
Well, I'm a carpenter. I could be like Joshua in the Battle of Jericho.
Yeah, Joshua.
I could be David.
Yes, with the
Shoot, I
line.
could be Samson.
You might have to grow some hair, baby.
Oh, anyway, let's this food, huh?
All right, all right.
Smell good.
All right, well, I'm glad.
All right, we thank you, Lord,
Yes.
for this day. We thank you for the changes. We thank you for food on our table. Thank you for the hope and promise of our praise all these years. Thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name, amen.
Well, you know, there was a lot of conversation going on in the hills, just like that. A lot of folks was hearing about all of the things that was going on. We was even hearing that pretty soon President Lincoln was going to invite the colored man to fight because, you know, at that time, colored man was not able to fight. And people really wanted to join. They had been making volunteer and practicing and all of that sort of thing, but it wasn't ready. So we were there on the cusp, right there, ready to fight. It was a holy war for us, and we're gonna see you next time to continue this story. And until we see you next time, singing with a sword in my hand, Lord. Singing with a sword in my hand. Singing with a sword in my hand, Lord. Singing with a sword in my hand. Pretty is singing singing with a sword in my hand, praying with a sword in my hand, Lord, join. Praying with a sword in my hand, praying with a sword in my hand, Lord, praying with a sword in my hand. Prettiest praying I ever heard your part, way over on the hill. The angels pray, I pray too, praying with a sword in my hand, Lord, praying with a sword in my hand, praying with a sword in my hand, Lord, praying with a sword in my hand, shouting with a sword in my hand, Lord, shouting with a sword in my hand, shouting with a sword in my hand, Lord, shouting with a sword in my hand. Prettiest shout I ever heard, way over on the hill. The angels shout, I shout too, shout with a sword in my hand, Lord, shout with a sword in my hand, shout with a sword in my hand, Lord, shout with a sword in my hand, in my hand, Lord, shout with a sword in my hand, singing with a sword in my hand, singing with a sword in my hand, singing with a sword in my hand, in my hand. So, we're really lucky because we get to talk to y'all. Is anybody here who's Civil War buff? Yes? Oh, so you know quite a bit. And we thank you for joining in the conversation with us. And I just want to say that Keith and I have been talking about the Hills community, which is a real community, a Westchester African American community, and it was researched and written about in this book by Professor Edith Ann Quinn called Freedom Journey, Black Civil War Soldiers and the Hills Community. The Hills Community is where we said it was, up there, kind of tucked up there in the corner of those three places up by Silver Lake. It was, at its height, it was 191 people. And when General Order, it was 143, happened in 1863, and Lincoln invited the African American men to fight. Of the 52 adult men who lived in the Hills, 36 of them went to fight, which is nearly 70% of them, in their 40s and their 50s. And so we're assisting, rounding out the story of the Civil War by telling from the perspective of the African American, and we're really happy to be able to tell you from a local perspective the history of the Civil War from an African American perspective. So that's what fuels our art. And if anyone has any comments or questions, or yes.
I'd like to know if the Hills were part of the Underground Railroad.
You know, she makes a specific point to say no, they weren't. But Peekskill, which was about 30 miles, was active in the Underground Railroad. It could have, it could have been, because things were so fluid, that people who ran away, maybe somebody settled in the Hills, but the Hills itself wasn't an Underground Railroad stop.
Yeah, it's only 191 people in that community. They did their own. They weren't really part of that. Mm-hmm. And the institution at that time, slavery, very complex.
Yeah.
Very complex. It's about survival. You had to be extremely intelligent to be enslaved and survive. So, we want to honor our ancestors who were strong enough and smart enough to sustain that sort of, institution. Mm-hmm. Any questions?
I was reading some time ago where they found graves
this, but I haven't read the book yet. I wonder if they're getting archaeological surveys to find out if there
Where?
were, in the hills, the houses.
Yeah, I don't know. I did have the opportunity to speak to Professor Quinn, and she said she was really looking forward to walking us up there because you could really still feel the energy of the people and the community, but I don't know that anything formal has been done. But at least it hasn't been paved over. Thank goodness, it's in some wooded area, up a path somewhere, she said. Yes, sir.
Yes, you feel Lincoln was sincere, or I think I read that in the original draft of the Emancipation Proclamation, there was a clause about colonization of freed slaves overseas.
I
He
think,
dropped that when he issued the final draft of the Emancipation Proclamation.
I think
So,
he-
was he running out of soldiers? Is that why he?
yes, he was running out of soldiers. Now, Mr. Civil War buff, you're gonna help me here. The Union was suffering some defeats. They needed bodies. They had called for the draft. The white men were really upset with them. That if you didn't have money, you couldn't buy out at a draft. If you had money, you could buy at $300, you could buy out at a draft. So they had those draft riots, and people were really, really upset, and they needed more bodies. And I think Lincoln was a consummate politician, actually, is what he was. And so he wanted to win. I mean, I'm not saying he didn't have any scruples or principle, but he wanted to win, and so he did what he needed to do to win. Yeah. Sir, would you have anything to add to that? In the green shirt? No? Okay, all right. Yes, sir.
What's the relationship between they were free and some were slaves, is that correct in the hills? Or
No.
all free?
No, all free, because by 1827, everybody in New York was free.
Right,
So we were depicting 1862,
right.
about 1862, late 1862, so everybody was free there.
The connection was there a connection between them and the African Americans in New York City when they formed the Zion Church?
Right. I think there was some, and in any case, there were the traveling preachers. So Professor Quinn does document abolition preachers coming up from New York City, down from New Haven, from Rye, New York. I guess they had a circuit, and they would New York City was about 25 miles, just like Peekskill was about 25 miles, which in them days was, kind of far to travel. I'm sure people did it. It was a little far to travel, but you had to keep it, it was like going to Europe would be now, I guess.
Well, they're free pilots that use boats. They're free pilot a boat back and forth. So there was some connection back and forth with people, and in terms of business, yeah.
Of the 36 that went to fight in the war, how many of them actually survived?
You said, well,
I think 13 passed.
13 of them passed away.
I
That
think-
was in the book.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think 13 of them passed away, and most of them passed away from disease.
Disease.
Because the Union Army wasn't well taken care of, either white or black, but the black was especially poorly taken care of. They were struck down, a lot of them by
The
disease.
health, yeah.
Yeah. But a lot of men made it back. I think, yeah. A lot of men made it back. The Hills community itself, actually, though, it went extinct about 1925. Because they made it back, but then people wanted to move to the city. They wanted to follow the jobs, et cetera, et cetera. It eventually just dissipated, and now it's gone.
Buddy?
Is there any pictures or drawings of any of the Hill residents in the book?
Yes, and which is in the gift shop.
Some maps, some
Right.
pictures.
Um, Yeah, there's a few. There's a few. Can't say that there's a lot, but there's a few. Uh-huh.
What about grave sites?
The grave sites, I believe, are up there. I think, now somebody was telling us on Sunday that they had something called the Stony Hill Cemetery. Y'all know that? Stony Hill Cemetery?
Stony Hill Cemetery.
And that she thought maybe there was some connection there, but I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly. But I think it's still, going back to that other question, I think it's still pristine, if you know what I mean. It's not been, yeah, or excavated or anything like that. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Was the professor able to track down and interview any descendants of the book?
No, I don't recall that she was. What, the thing that was really wonderful for her
Letters.
were the letters that she was able, that were intact, because Simeon Tiercy's wife was applying for the widow's pension. And she happened to hand in the letters that he had written to her, and they were preserved intact. And I guess Professor Quinn had been researching for a long time, and then here were these letters. So in the book you can see, she actually has pictures of the letters in his own handwriting and so on. But I don't recall that she was able to find any actual descendants. But their names make me think that in White Plains and North Castle and those places, there must be people, last name Purdy and Brown and Gilchrist and Barker and Tiercy, and so they must be there if somebody would take it on. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Were they, I know he mentioned a lot about artisans. He was a carpenter, and, in the South, we had a lot of artisans who were slaves,
Yeah.
Were the majority of slaves who were in that part of the hills, they weren't, obviously they weren't artisans, but they was hand servants, servants who, it was no agriculture, to my knowledge.
Yeah, no, in the hills, they were farmers.
They were farmers.
They were mostly farmers. It was rugged country, but there was rich farmland around, so they would have their own plot, and then they would work the farms. And so they had day work and they had month work, but you was really moving ahead if you could get on by the month in the Quaker Purdy's farm or Quaker somebody's farm, and you earned a lot of money. And so they were relatively prosperous there. Uh-huh. And as far as the South, I mean, there was some if you ever go, maybe some of you have been, on those plantation tours, and you look at the architecture of those homes, and then you say, oh, they were built by slaves, and then but then you stop and you look at that beautiful, beautiful architecture.
Yeah.
And you think about the craft that went into that, as long as it was free labor, and then once the labor was not free anymore, of course we couldn't get the jobs, and we lost the skills in a generation or two. Or in the North, you would be able maybe to learn the skill, but then you couldn't get the job. I mean, a lot of those draft riots was about that. The Irish immigrants came and they got jobs, and they didn't want to leave those jobs and go fight some war that they didn't feel had anything to do with them. And then here was the black men going to get their jobs as, up and down the road as machinists and blacksmiths and whatever other jobs that they had. So that was a real issue about those jobs and that pay. Yeah.
On that point, a lot of people, when they talk about slavery, they always talk about, a house, who, and all that, all the, status was, But in reality, the status were the artisans. They were the highest status people.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
But people tend to
Right.
miss
Well,
the
that's-
blacksmiths and the carpenters.
Yeah.
That's right.
And they were the only ones who bought their freedom, because
Right.
they bought their freedom after working on their own, and then they would get their families and bring them up. But although people know it, they don't emphasize that, I know.
No.
They spend more time
Well, we have.
talking about, oh yeah, the people in the service in the house who actually hated it because they saw racism right up front, you know, right in front of their face, you know. But that's a big misconception that people have.
Well, you know, we got a postage stamp worth of information about slavery. And slavery was so complex.
Yeah.
And the relationships that people had with each other was really complex. And free people lived in the South, and people with, as the gentleman is saying, with a great deal of skill, hired out, and you know, and it was just a really complex relationship. And it's going to be great as we uncover the actual relationships and how people worked together and apart and whatever.
And the information's out there. You know, there's a lot of information out there. Phillips.
Georgetown University.
Oh, yeah. And Phillipsburg Manor right here in Terrytown. If you ever get a chance to go to Phillipsburg Manor in Terrytown, it was a real farm, and the slaves built all of that. The mill with no screws, and it's still standing. These great structures, the barn, everything, and they ran the farm while, you know, Mr. Phillipsburg was out doing stuff. So they read, they write, they do the accounts, accountants, you know, they did all the work. And so, yeah, many times we talk about slaves, but they were people who were enslaved. There's no slaves, right? People who were enslaved had a lot of genius and a lot of intelligence and work to offer, and built the country for free.
13 of the first 15 jockeys in the Kentucky Derby, the first Kentucky Derby, were black men who were enslaved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you know, we you know, we're living in a wonderful time. I mean, it's very upheaval and craziness, etc. But you know, so much information is being uncovered, and that we're able to share with each other. We feel particularly happy to be able to share it here and with you. We really are happy, and so.
Finish with another song.
Well, y'all gonna have to sing with us.
Okay, yeah, what a great idea. Okay, what should we sing?
Singing with a sword in my hand.
Yeah, that's a
Think
beautiful
about
song.
that song. Singing with a sword in my hand.
That was
Always have, you know, so many codes, right? We're bilingual by nature. There's so many ways of survival. So it's a metaphor when you think about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Okay, so y'all ready, right?
Simple song. And these songs stay with you.
And they
That's one
stay with
thing
you. You'll be singing in the bathroom next week.
Yeah. One thing about the spirituals of these, you know, these songs, they stay with you. You know, there's some real spiritual magic in these things.
Singing with a sword in my hand, Lord. Singing with a sword in my hand. Singing with a sword in my hand, Lord. Singing with a sword in my hand. Prettiest singing I ever heard. Way over on the hill. The angels sing, I sing too. Singing with a sword in my hand, Lord. Singing with a sword in my hand. Singing with a sword in my hand, Lord. Singing with a sword in my hand. Praying with a sword in my hand, Lord. Praying with a sword in my hand. Praying with a sword in my hand, Lord. Praying with a sword in my hand. Prettiest praying I ever heard. Way over on the hill. Angels pray, I pray too. Pray with a sword in my hand, Lord. Come on, pray with a sword in my hand. Come on, pray with a sword in my hand, Lord. Pray with a sword in my hand. Shout with a sword in my hand, Lord. Singing with a sword in my hand, Lord. Singing with a sword in my hand, 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 in my hand.
Vienna, Carroll. Thank you.
Thank y'all so much. All right.
Encore?